I really push people. You can't possibly have self-confidence, self-respect, self-esteem, motivation if you're not clear what you're good at. The more you know what you're good at, the stronger the confidence, the stronger the push forward. But the second thing that I find leaders do that make a difference, page 5, and that is they know what they stand for. Know what they stand for. As number 1 says in that handout, I often ask people, do you know what you really, really, really love? In other words, you know what your values are. What's number 1, number 2, what's most important, second most important. Because if you don't know what you really love, the only other alternative is to settle for less, and that will burn you out. I can't say, for example, that my kids are important to me and not have time to spend with them. Can't say one thing, live another way, and expect to have integrity, self-esteem. I know, I tried that for years. I was traveling 250 days a year, speaking in 5 states in 5 days, hardly ever home. Couldn't say my kids are important and never see them. Do you know what you really love? Because if you don't follow what you know that you love, again, you settle for less. After Walt Disney passed away, his relative Roy Disney took over the Disney empire. And Roy made a beautiful statement. He said, if you know, or I'll put it this way, he said, if your values are clear, decisions are easy. You don't sit there and sweat it out. Do I do this? Do I do that? When your values are clear, decisions are easy. That's point 1. But the second point is once you know what you love, you must live by what you value. One of the quickest ways people kill off their leadership ability, their self-respect, is profess a set of values and not live accordingly. Live by what you value. I can't say, for example, that God's important to me. And of course he is, very important. Can't say that God's important to me and not have time to spend with him. Got to know what you love, live by what you value. And I find so many people never quite figure out their values or have congruity in their values until possibly it's too late. I find on their deathbed, people get very clear about their values. I've donated a lot of my time to groups of dying cancer patients. I've lost loved ones that way. And the first time I was asked to speak to that group, I was scared. I speak on things like leadership, motivation, teamwork. What do you say to dying people? As I listened to them, I realized there were 2 emotions people have when they're approaching death. Half the group full of peace. They figured out what was important. They lived their lives accordingly, end up feeling peaceful. And the second group, regret. They wasted their life, didn't live according to what they knew was important, end up with a sense of regret, knowing there's no second chance. Got to know what you love, live by what you value. Remember one of those cancer groups I first spoke to, young man in the audience, maybe 27 years of age, married for 3 years, still in that honeymoon period. His wife is expecting their first baby, all exciting. His job going beautifully, getting all the promotions, as we say, all his ducks in a row. Then got the news he had terminal cancer, 6 months left to live. Obviously bad news. But he somehow had figured out what was important and lived his life accordingly. Saw his obituary a few weeks after the program. Knowing what you love, living the way you value. And unfortunately, it's the history of half the relationships in this country. We find an awful lot of people getting married where they think, gee, she's awfully cute. He's a lot of fun. Let's get married. Should be a blast. Get married and find out they can't make it work. Not necessarily bad people, but never figured out their values. Get together and can't make it work. Got to know what you love, live by what you value. Because this is where integrity comes in for a leader. Point 3 on that handout of walking your talk. Walk your talk. You see, when we're on Earth, there are only 3 things we can invest: our time, money, and energy. That's it. People can talk a good game. They can gab your ear off. about what they think is important, what they say they value. But it comes right down to what those investments are: time, money, energy. For example, I do a 5-day leadership retreat every year at the Cooper Clinic in Dallas, Texas, for CEOs of various corporations. And almost always all males, somewhat sexist, unfortunately. I hear some of these guys say things like this: yep, and they're working 60 hours a week, 80 hours a week. They're killing themselves. And I say, you're working 60 hours, 80 hours. Why are you working so hard? And with great pride, they say, well, I'm working for my kids. Well, my kids have it better than I had it. I'll say, please show me your calendar where your kids appear. And there's dead silence in the audience, because they intuitively know. Then I share the research that the average male executive spends no more than 14 minutes a week with his kids. 14 minutes playing a game, having a conversation. In other words, I would tell these guys, don't tell me the reason you work is for the kids and they get 14 minutes of your time. No research anywhere that shows kids want dad's money instead of the relationship. My first career, before I became a professor and then opened my own company, my first career, I was a reform school therapist, a place called Boysville, Michigan. I would work with young men who are beaten to a pulp by their dads, hoping at some point in the future might have a relationship with him. Does your calendar reflect your real values? It could be time. It's also money. I hear people say things like, well, I believe in my church. Yep, I believe in my church, real important, believe in my mission. They say they believe in their church and they give $1 a week. Well, I tell people, get off it. If it's really that important to you and you had enough income, it wouldn't be $1 a week. And so matching the time, money, energy, and the resources. If we don't walk our talk, we end up losing our self-respect as well as the respect of others. And so leaders that make a difference, who lead themselves well, start with knowing what they're good at. They know what they stand for. And the third thing, page 6, talks about briefly working outside your comfort zone. One of the great Christian leaders the last 50 years, Dr. Bruce Larson, wrote several great books. You might have seen him on TV, read his books. He would appear sometimes at the Crystal Cathedral in Southern California. But one great study that Bruce did, he was commissioned by the Lilly Foundation healthcare group to do a research project. And they said, Bruce, there are all these workshops across the country that talk about leadership, motivation, teamwork, etc. Nobody has time to listen to all the leaders, go to all the programs. We'll pay you a full-time salary for 2 years. All you have to do is go to workshops. It might be a 1-day program, 5-day workshop, 2-hour keynote. Sit in the audience. Afterwards, interview the workshop leader, the expert, and ask, what's the one thing you agree you all got to have to be an effective leader in today's crazy world? He got one consistent answer. To be an effective leader in today's world, you must have a life of risk, R-A-S-K. He didn't expect that answer. What he found, 1A on your handout, there's a strong connection between those people who have an overdose of fear in their life and poor mental health. Some people say things like, oh, I couldn't give a speech. I'd be nervous. I couldn't do that kind of job. I've always done it this way. If you got too much fear in your life, don't have much room for self-respect, motivation, or making a difference. He also found this connection, that those folks who don't take risks do not experience love. And there are millions of people in this country and around the world, even married people, who have never in their whole lifetime experienced good, healthy, juicy intimacy. In other words, closeness. Because what happens in relationships on this earth, everybody gets hurt. There's no such thing on earth as a perfect relationship. Whether it's you and your spouse, you and a coworker, you and a subordinate, you and a kid, you and a customer, there's hurt in every relationship. It might be an unkind word, a sarcastic tone of voice, forgetting to return the phone call you promised, but hurt in every relationship. When some people get hurt, they say, look, I've been hurt enough. No longer trust my husband or my wife or all males or all females or all managers or all leaders. No more hurt for me. and they put up the walls to keep out the hurt. But it also keeps out the intimacy, closeness at home, and the teamwork on the job. The only way you get close to somebody else is tear the walls down. Get gutsy, open, honest, vulnerable, and it means you will get stepped on once in a while. Those who refuse to take any risks settle for cool, distant relationships. What I thought was even more shocking in Dr. Larson's research, we can now prove the connection between those folks who do not take enough risks actually die earlier, which of course is ultimate demotivation. You know the ideal. For some people, they'll say, well, I'm 65, 67, I've worked all these years, killed myself, gonna sit back, collect Social Security, pension plan, take it easy, and do nothing. And you all know that's pretty stupid. Those who decide to retire and do nothing live in the average 1 year, and they're dead. Not a lot of ways to live a long life, not to have some new risks, new challenges. One of my clients for years has been Honeywell Corporation, defense contractor. They have a horrible statistic, and that is 50% of all their engineers are dead within 2 years of retirement age. 50%. And I tell my audiences, I don't know about you, but I don't want to work 30, 40, 50 years, retire, and drop dead 2 years later. What a stupid waste of life. I want to be out there for years afterwards being happy, healthy, productive. I gave that statistic to the folks at IBM in Vermont. They brought me in 17 times 1 year so I could speak to all 7,000 employees, meeting after meeting after meeting. I said, you realize at Honeywell, half the engineers are dead within 2 years of retirement age? They said, what are you complaining about? At IBM, it's not just engineers. Half of all our retirees are dead in 18 months. They don't get 2 years. If you'd like to do some research, come with me sometime. We'll go to Rochester, Minnesota. Perhaps the best, at least at one point in time, IBM around. Won the Malcolm Baldrige Award several times. There they said at IBM Rochester, we envy the IBM Vermont record. At that location, half of all the retirees are dead in 13 Social Security checks. We think, what's going on? Basically, as point D says in your paper there, D and E, there's danger in living too much of your life in the comfort zone. We all have a comfort zone. You might call it like that, a circle, inside of which are all the things we typically do. We might go to a meeting and sit in the same place we always have. The same folks never say a word during the meeting, but they gossip in the hallway after the meeting. People sit in the same place in church, have the same friends, same procedures, same policies, same routines. Live your whole life in the comfort zone. After a while, we get to feel like, gee, I don't know if I could change. The tragedy of approaching middle age, as a person, as a professional, as an organization, it's tempting to have a comfort zone that gets smaller and smaller, no longer doing anything. What champion leaders do, they take the risk of departure. They step outside the comfort zone and try something different. No matter what happens, guarantee some growth. I realize I can do it, or at least I live by courage, not controlled by fear. Now that's very quick, very much a skimming of 3 deep practices: knowing what you're good at, know what you stand for, and learn to work outside your comfort zone. The interesting thing for me, what put me on this path of leadership development for my entire career, was a high school auditorium meeting. Sitting there years ago as a young kid, 15, 16, 17 years of age. We get these assembly meetings once in a while. They rolled a man onto the stage who at that time, you might call it an iron lung, lived his life in a respirator, paralyzed from the neck down. All of us kids were wiggling and making noises, things like that. Because of his breathing difficulty, he couldn't speak with a deep, resonant voice. But his opening comment was this. He said, every dream I've ever had, I've been able to accomplish. Well, that shut us kids up very quickly. Wanted to hear what he had to say. How can he live his life in an iron lung and accomplish all of his dreams? So he told us. He said, I always wanted to write a book, but I can't write because my arms don't work. So I got a tape recorder and talked my whole life story into the tape recorder. 7 days a week for a year. End of the year, I wanted to hear the book played back to me. and every tape was blank. He purchased a defective recorder and never bothered to check it out. Anybody might have felt like giving up, and it might have been him, but he said, I started over. And the day my book is published, I always wanted to be president of a club, and I'm president of a club. I always wanted to be a speaker. I've now given over 200 speeches. They let me out once in a while. So every dream I've ever had, I've been able to accomplish. He went on like that for 45 minutes. I'll never forget his finishing line. He said, life is a banquet, but most people are starving to death because they don't know how to lead themselves and lead others. Go out and partake of life. And when you do, think of me. Well, he doesn't know me from Adam, but I've thought about him 10,000 times over the years. Thought he can accomplish so much with so little. There's not much excuse for most people not to accomplish a great deal more with the right kinds of leadership practices working for them. Thanks, Rick, and thanks, everybody. And if you have time, I'm certainly willing to answer any questions.
Thank you for taking the time, Alan. That was exceptional. One of the questions that had come in was why leaders begin to fail. I wonder if you have a comment there.
I think a couple of things going on. One is they often start failing because they do not get feedback or listen to the feedback that's coming in from their customers, the people that they're leading. If I think I know it all, I don't need any feedback, I start getting in trouble. I think leaders also get in trouble when they stop continuing education. There's that old phrase, leaders are readers, kind of corny sounding, but it's true. I find the best leaders are never stopping their education to get better.
That's great. You know, Alan, you had covered so much that I've read in your books also. And one of the thoughts is very similar to Barnabas, where you talked about our focus was time and energy. We say time and talent. As you've stepped people through looking at their values and value-driven behavior, that was just exceptional. Is there any other insight that you give of people to transition to doing versus doing that first initial personal work?
I'm not sure I follow you, Rick. Say it again, please.
Once somebody has worked on what their value is and what they're good at, how do they step out and take that risk you were talking about?
Oh, okay. I recommend a six-pack, what I call the six-pack method. And that is, people know about to-do sheets, things like that. Got to get these things done today. I think it's important somewhere to have a purpose statement for your life, your ministry, your mission, your work. It may be one or two purpose statements. Put it on a piece of paper. On your sheet of paper, have what I call a six-pack. These are 6 things I want to accomplish today. May not get them all finished, but things I want to work on. And of those 6, 3 of them should have clear connections to your purpose and values. So you see yourself being consistent with those values and moving towards that purpose. Some things on the to-do list are just functional, like taking out the garbage and dropping the kids off at soccer. But 3 of the things should have a clear value-connected, purpose-driven component.
That's great. Sorry to look down for a little bit. I was writing that down. Alan, I really do appreciate your time. There are some other questions, but we're limited on time. Right. So I'll transition back to Becky and the team. Thank you for making.
Thank you, everybody.
Great. Well, that is the beginning of the end of our meeting today. I'm going to close us out with prayer. But before I do, I want to give an update on the Barnabas group. You've met a number of the Barnabas leaders, and Sean and Rick, others, Olin, who opened us in prayer, and Bill, who wasn't part of the program today, but is on, Becky, who's helping run the national and run this event. We have labored for many years to bring Barnabas to the Front Range. And since the inception of the Front Range Barnabas, we've had 35 ministries present to us. Ministries like Faith Comes by Hearing that brought an awareness to us as a partnership, as a group, to just be aware of what's going on in the world and give us an opportunity to be able to engage with these ministries on a level other than just giving money, to be able to use our time and talent to be able to engage with them. And I hope you'll do that with Faith Comes by Hearing. Dr. Zimmerman's keynote today is the latest of a long list of great, excellent presentations. They've included syndicated columnist Star Parker, Focus on the Family's president, Jim Daly. We just had some great speakers, and Alan, you've continued that tradition today. Thank you for your contribution. And despite the COVID pandemic, we've continued to labor on by taking it online and attempted to bring these excellent ministries to our partners and guests in 2020. But as we head into 2021, both the world at large and we at the Barnabas Group Front Range are really entering an unknown future. As a partnership model, which the Barnabas Group is, we can't continue without partners. And unfortunately, our paying partners have become harder to find than COVID tests back in March. So as a result, we've decided to conclude the Barnabas Group Front Range for this season. So this marks the final meeting of the Barnabas Group. I'm hoping for those who are on today, and I know there's a gathering from Kansas City who are looking to launch Barnabas in Kansas City. This message is not for you. Thank you for your efforts. But here in Colorado, I am doing a feasibility study to see if there's interest in maintaining a Barnabas Group in Colorado. Just so you know, there's already 20 people who have made a financial commitment to launching Barnabas Group and headquartering it out of Colorado Springs. We need 10 more people willing to invest in the Barnabas Group in order to keep it going. Those monies won't transact until we're able to start meeting together in person, which we hope will happen sometime in the first or second quarter of 2021. But unless the financial commitment is made now, there's no point in trying and keeping that flame alive in 2021, because as a partnership, we exist based on the partners contributing to the effort. So if you would be interested in contributing to the effort, not just financially, but with your excellence, with your talents, we would welcome that, and I would welcome that. You've got my email address on the screen there, jeff.gott@barnabasgroup.org, and my phone number. If you are interested in keeping Barnabas going, if you've appreciated past meetings or today's meeting, then I'd welcome you to reach out to me before Thanksgiving. I've got a decision to make as to whether we try to move forward, and I need to know if there's committed partners out there that want to see this continue in Colorado. I hope so, but the decision is yours. So with that, I'm going to close this up. This will be the formal close of the meeting, but for those who are interested in hearing more about Faith Comes by Hearing and having a breakout session with Joey Knight to hear more about how you could be involved, that will immediately follow. So let me pray, and then I'll close this out. Heavenly Father, thank you for just the many, many years of effort by the leaders of the Barnabas Group here on the Front Range to bring this really needed ministry to our parts, to Colorado, to awaken us to great ministries that we've never heard of, that are out there doing your work, that need help that goes beyond money and gives us as the partnership and guests an opportunity to engage. And we heard that again today with Faith Comes by Hearing. I ask your blessing on them. And Father, this gathering to bring in great speakers, to really challenge us on topics like leadership, like we heard today from Dr. Zimmerman, I just pray your blessing on him and his family. And Lord, we rest in the fact that you are in control, and that if this is something you want to continue in Colorado, then it will continue in Colorado. And if the time has come for us to put this to rest for a season, we rest in that. We trust in you. And so, Father, thank you for this season. Thank you for this morning. Thank you for those who have joined us today. We just ask your blessing on them. And yeah, we release this time to go out and be your church in a world that's desperately in need. In Jesus' name, amen. All right, well, thank you. Again, that concludes the formal meeting. So no offense when you sign off. We appreciate you being here today. But for those who wish to stay on and meet for a few minutes with our presenting ministry, Faith Comes by Hearing, and Joey Knight, please just stay on, and we'll move over to that here momentarily. So Becky, if you would go ahead and release Joey so that he's got an open mic. Great. Joey, can you hear me okay?
I can, Jeff, yes.
Okay. Super, super duper. All right. So for everyone that has remained on the call, I just want to kind of set this up. So what we've tried to do with the Barnabas group, and this is nationwide, is to allow folks who have joined to participate in a breakout session to find out more, find out specifically how their gifts and abilities could align with that ministry. And a lot of times that just starts with asking deeper questions about, well, tell me about, what your ministry really is and how you're doing that. So I thought I would start off with just a couple of questions and then turn it over to the group at large. Joey, not to hit you with a zinger, but the thought came to me while you were speaking. Why 2033? Why is that? How was that decided as the year? And how do you feel as an organization that is the time when you can have all these languages translated?
Yeah, and that is a great question. Actually, we did not originally come up with 2033. It came from Mark Green, who is a partner with Faith Comes by Hearing with Hobby Lobby, and Illuminations came up with that date. And as we prayed about it and prayed whether to join their organization, that's how that all evolved. God put us in connection with them, and then they agreed to allow us to play in their sandbox. And so
okay,
that's how that date came out.
Okay, got it. Good. And then this is kind of a funny question, but I imagine you get it a lot. When you're translating into these various languages around the world, 400 or 560 to date, I think, what version of scripture are you using to translate?
Well, of course, we're using the NIV out of Colorado Springs. No, we use the original Greek and Hebrew text as our basis. So we're not going from an English translation to another translation.
Okay. Yeah. Excellent. That makes sense. Got it. And then you showed a number of devices. The Proclaimer was the one you spoke about a number of times, but I'm thinking about the types of folks that you're taking these products into. A lot of them are living, out in the bush or out in the jungle. Are these solar powered, or how is it that these devices are able to work in these remote settings?
The Proclaimers are they're solar powered. The big one that you saw on the screen that can talk to like up to 250, 300 people. It actually has a crank on it also, so you can crank it for 15 minutes and listen for an hour. Okay. So they've got a regular battery like a double A's, and then they've also got a rechargeable AC/DC battery in there. So there's multiple ways to keep them working. Got it.
Great. Thank you. All right. And then you talked about and stated that distribution is the problem, right? You've got the devices, you've got the languages, but these places are hard to reach in part because the borders are closed. But then you gave an example, and I think it was Bangladesh, where I think it was microchips you talked about taking in. Can you just touch on the microchips and how those give you a way to be able to get into these closed countries?
Yeah, and that's another great point too, because around the world doesn't use iPhones like we do in the United States. Most of the world has smartphones that are made by Samsung. they cost $28 around the world, and they have a micro SD chip is what powers the data. So around the world, people are really, really good at putting in a chip, downloading whatever's on there to their phone, and then transferring that information to their neighbor. And they're really good at that. So it spreads virally without the internet. It's just a phone-to-phone communication. After you load your SD card, micro SD card in your phone, then you've got the scriptures in your heart language, and you can listen to your phone then anytime you want to, as long as you've got a cellular connection to what's what's on there.
Got it. Okay. Got it. And I assume, again, if it's going to fit in a phone, it's quite small, and so someone could sneak these in without basically being detected by authorities, and even if authorities saw it, they probably wouldn't know what it is.
Right. Most churches, Jeff, around the United States, they have established missions connections. So what happens in these countries is, if you've got a relationship and you've got a visa already built, let's say 10 years ago, you can get back into the country. But if we go there and try to bring things, and we don't have we got to get a new visa or whatever to go to that country, it's impossible. That's why the churches have a huge advantage. They've got relationships built, like the gentleman on the Bangladesh. He's been going there for 37 years, and he walks right through the border. So he's got a bag of 5,000 micro SD cards in his suitcase and never gets stopped. So he's reached over 250,000 people for Christ with those cards. And so that's a good example of how that works.
Yeah, that's truly amazing. I mean, I mentioned God's smuggler during the presentation. I mean, it really is kind of a modern day God's smuggler example there. That's great. And then, so one of the opportunities, your number 2 strategic ways to be involved is connecting your church with faith comes by hearing. So let me just give a specific example so that you can answer specifically. My wife has made a 5-year commitment to going to a village in Guatemala that is as remote can be. How would she connect with Faith Comes by Hearing to get some of these devices to be able to take to the people down there in this remote village in Guatemala? How would that work?
Okay, so and I forgot to mention this in the presentation. What we will do is let's say what she needs to do is just email me, and what we will do is we will set her up with some proclaimers. We will give them to her free. They're $157 is what we charge donors, but we will give them to churches up to probably 10 of them free, so that they can do their missions work and put the exact language in Guatemala, whatever is prevalent there. And you figure out what language it is by going to the free app called Bible.is. And you can look and pick the exact Guatemalan language that you want on the device. We can put up to 4 languages on each device.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And so a lot of times Spanish is the trade language, and then you might have 2 Guatemalan village languages on there, and then maybe English as the 4th language. And we'll load those for them. We'll ship them to the church. We won't ship them to Guatemala. We'll ship them to her, in Colorado Springs or wherever, and then you transport them over, and they're yours. And a lot of times, what's really cool is when you can give one of those to like the chief, the head of the village, as a gift, and boy, that really smooths the way for additional work in that part of the world.
Yeah, that's excellent. Yeah, that's a win-win, because you win because you're solving your distribution problem. The ministry who's going in wins because they establish favor with the authority and bring the gospel in the heart language. That's really awesome.
Yeah.
Exciting. Well, let me open it up. There's a handful of folks still on, and they may have questions as well, so I don't want to dominate. So if anyone else has a question, feel free to throw it out there.
Jeff, I want to just jump on your question. So Joey, I'm actively involved in Uganda. My family started 2 ministries there, so we've got connections to hundreds of leaders and thousands of people. So I just jumped over to I jumped over to the Bible.is, and so I'm there. So where am I going to kind of find out? Because we go to Uganda every year, so we could easily bring in a lot of microchips. Everybody has a phone there. Even the people that make $1 a day have
Right.
phones.
I do.
Yeah, which is bizarre to me, but it's true. So anyway, so can you give a little more direction on where to go on here?
Yeah, I use my phone app. Are you on the actual web address on the
Yeah.
Okay, there should be a search bar near the top, or let me go there real quick,
Yeah, that'd be great.
because I use my phone all the time. It's a free app on the phone.
Yeah.
Um,
And nothing's jumping out at me it does say tap into 1,300 languages.
Well, and while he's searching there, Brian, my hunch is that if you were to call the folks at Faith Comes by Hearing and ask them, hey, I'm going to this part of Uganda, bless you,
Yeah.
can you help me
Yeah, you're right.
which languages to ask for? They would absolutely be able to help you with that.
That'd be great. Okay, I can do that.
and then also you can go to click on go to the Bible. Do you see that button?
Yep. Let's see here.
And then it'll open up.
Go to the Bible. Yep.
Yeah, mine opens up the ESV, and then click on the button that says ESV, the little downward button.
Right.
Click on that, and then you'll see country, language, search version.
Gotcha. Okay.
So
Yeah, that's
then you can
perfect.
go to country, and then all the countries of the world are listed there in alphabetical order. And the key is for me too is to let me get back on the Zoom presentation, is to go to the country, like you said,
Yeah.
instead of the language, because sometimes the language isn't easy to spell, and you think you spell it. One time I got totally embarrassed. I was with a big group, and they wanted to hear Swahili, and so I was showing them how to use it, and I was so excited and couldn't find Swahili on there. That's because it's spelled Kiswahili.
Yeah. Right.
And so I learned that the hard way.
Yeah. So in Uganda, it's showing about probably 50 languages. So that's great. Thank you.
Yes, and then so like if you were going to if you wanted a proclaimer built, you could pick any 4 of those languages that are listed there. And then what I need to know is exactly what the names of them are in the Bible S. That's literally where we go and we take those files and hard load them on the device. Does that make sense?
Yes, because I do pastors conferences. God is your provider, pastor conferences. So I could definitely.
Well, and if you get to a point where you need more than just a few, obviously we got to charge then. But I've got donors that would be interested, in supporting something like that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Great. Were there any other questions?
Not at this time.
Yeah. My first time being on, but you really, really, really appreciated this. Rick, you told me about this like forever ago, and I finally just got connected. So yeah. And Jeff, I probably would want to hear a little more about your goal of people and supporting it and all that. So I'll shoot you an email. So
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, please do. And the Lord will guide us. And like I said, we've already gotten good kind of grassroots support. With the idea, COVID's certainly a challenge. I don't want to launch until we can be back in person, because I see Barnabas as much as a educational ministry about what ministries are going on out there, but it's also a fellowship, right? And so I really think coming together is an important part. And it's one thing when we had an established group to keep it going online. It's quite another to try and start it online. But maybe I'm just lacking faith. We'll see what the Lord compels me to do here. But yeah, I'd love to talk with you, Brian. And again, there's no reason why we can't make this a Denver, Colorado Springs initiative. So because I believe you're in Denver now, right?
yeah, I'm up in Golden. So
yeah, so we can figure that out. If there's no other questions for Joey, then I'll wrap up this time. But Joey, thank you again for really just what you do, that you're out there telling this story, because this is so cool. and again, every time I read your brand promise, I'm just like, wow, that is really, that's out there, man. We're talking about BHAG. So Lord bless you as you guys continue to do what you do. And obviously we'll stay in touch. So I hope many of the folks who are on today will kind of follow up with you to get more information. So
Yeah, we'll be praying for you too, on what you talked about, for the Front Range and continuing on. And so we'll be praying in Kansas City for God's will to be done in that, in your adventure.
Super. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Gentlemen, thanks for sticking around, and Lord bless you today.
Thanks, guys. God bless.